the lawn.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome to I open this meeting of the Linn-Wilsonville Board of Directors. We juggling a bunch of tech like we have to do nowadays. So I think we got most of it figured out, and yes, so we can, Ms. Douglas, will you please call the roll?
Kelly Sloat. Here. Chelsea King.
Here.
Kirsten Wyatt.
Here.
Christy Thompson.
Here.
Lewis Taylor.
He's working on being here right now.
He will be joining soon. Thank you.
Great, and we are, this is partly to remind myself, and partly just to let everybody in the public know, watching on Zoom or in the room, that we're, this is our speaker system and our microphone right now is out. So if you're here for public comment, when you come up to the podium, you just project to the owl here, then that's what's picking up our sound. And we may need to do that ourselves. So if you didn't quite have a hard time hearing us back there in the room, just feel free to raise your hand, and I'll know it's an indicator for us to raise our voices. So we're using a bit of a different audio system to test tonight. All right, we have some students here. Thank you so much for being here. Let's start with Wilsonville High School and Miguel.
All righty. So this past month was full of just break. We had a 2-week break, as you guys know. But besides that, we still had sports continuing. Our basketball teams dominated in the 2 tournaments they played in, which is really fun. And the boys played second place, which is really cool. Also, this week, like just today, they announced that Lindsay Antonsen is the Player of the Year for women's soccer, which is so insane. We all congratulated her, and it was just fun to get to see her around the halls. Also, as you guys know, early decisions for a lot of colleges have been coming out. And so there's been a lot of excitement and nervousness going around school. And also, basically, all the college apps have been due. So the seniors are done with that part of college apps, and we're moving on to scholarships. Something that is coming up in 2 weeks is our finals. And so in order to help prepare our students, Link Crew we'll be hosting what we call Snack and Study this year on Wednesday and Friday. And it's after school, and freshmen can come and join us, and we'll teach them how to study and not necessarily just make them cram as Coco and Cram used to do. And so we look forward to that. And December 15th was an early Christmas gift for myself because I got into Stanford. And what's been going on at Wilsonville High School and in my life as well. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Miguel. At Arts and Technology High School, we have Michelle.
So before we went to break, Art Tech hosted its annual holiday party, where Art Tech students and teachers have the opportunity to decorate gingerbread houses. We also played some games, and we had our annual holiday lasagna lunch with all the fixings. There we also got our holiday presents, sorry. And for the students that weren't able to make it, we're hopefully going to be able to deliver them within soon. Now that the New Year's in full swing, some of the Art Tech teachers have been talking with a lot of Art Tech students about the upcoming finals in a few weeks. Since a lot of us are very nervous, it's been a while since some of us have had finals. And this year they have actually started to ask us what we would like to see on finals to help better accommodate with how we like to learn. As I'm sure you know, our principal, Nick Shaken, is part of the planning team that is in charge of planning for the 3rd high school in our district that's opening in fall of 2023. And the time has come to finally pick the name for the new school. So there's a link on the district website for a survey where participants can submit what they think the new name of the school should be, and which will then be submitted to the board to vote on for the name in February. Thank you.
All right, and Westland High School, we have Lucinda.
Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. I don't know if they have my slide, but Over the past month in December, we finished up our Mr. and Ms. Mix pageant, which I chatted with you all about at our last school board meeting. And that top picture on the slide is a photo from the pageant. That's all of the 20+ participants. And we raised over $5,100 for Sources of Strength, which is an in-school anti-suicide prevention organization. And then you can see the two photos on the bottom of the screen. Those are part of a new project that I'm putting together called Senior Year on Film. So in our school, we have a ginormous corkboard that I'm soon going to be filling with a bunch of disposable camera photos that I've taken at senior events throughout the year. So those are just two pictures from football games. And I'm really excited about this wall. We're going to keep adding to it throughout the rest of the school year with photos from dances, May Day, graduation, anything like that. So I'm starting to put that together this week, and I look forward to having that ready at the end of the week. And then some things that we're looking forward to is we're starting to plan winter ball, which will hopefully happen in February. We're really excited about that. And then we're also planning for an open forum, which we'll host with our club leaders and some of the other ASB officers just next Wednesday, where we'll get a chance to chat about things happening in our school and ways for possible change. And I just wanted to thank you all for being on the school board because it is School Board Recognition Month. So I have some cards for you guys, which I set on the podium for the few of you that are online. Ms. Douglas will deliver those to you, but Westland ASB and the rest of the students, I'm really grateful for all the work that you guys do for the community, and I'll see you next month.
Thank you so much. That was a very generous segue into the next item on the agenda. And thank you to our students for driving here in the dark and for sharing a little glimpse of your world. And of course, is stay or go. And we don't want you cramming for finals week. So if you need to go do anything, you're invited to do that as well. And the next item on our agenda is Dr. Ludwig. For appreciation.
So that was a great segue. Thank you, Lucinda. Thank you, Michelle, Miguel, Lucinda, for coming in person and presenting each month. We have a picture on the slide. Definitely the five of you are our superheroes for the work that you do as volunteers. I think often our community doesn't either know that or recognize that it's actually volunteer service. Each of you have full-time jobs, you have families, and this is work and service that you do on top of all of that. And so we're incredibly grateful that you stepped into this leadership role, that you raised your hand and said, I'm willing to serve. Thank the community for voting for your service. You've been tremendous school board members during a really critical time for public schools, for our state, for our nation, as we all navigate these things together. So you have in front of you just small tokens of great appreciation from schools. You've got t-shirts and cards and probably lots of chocolate to share with your families. And we just want to recognize that your families give up this time with you as well. And we know that's a sacrifice that your families give here tonight with us instead of around the dinner table with your children and families. So we thank you for that. And we have a school board recognition proclamation that I will read. Whereas school boards create a vision for what students should know and be able to do. Whereas school boards establish clear standards for student performance. Whereas school boards ensure that student assessments are tied to established standards. Whereas school boards are accountable to the community for operating schools that support student achievement. Whereas school boards align school district resources to ensure that students meet standards. Whereas school boards create a climate that supports the philosophy that all children can learn at high levels. Whereas school boards build collaborative relationships based on trust, teamwork, and shared accountability. And whereas school boards are committed to continuous education and training on issues related to student achievement. Now, therefore, we hereby declare our appreciation to the members of the West Linn-Wilsonville School District School Board and proclaim the month of January to be School Board Recognition Month. We urge all citizens to join us in recognizing the dedication and hard work of local school board members in preparing today's students for tomorrow's world. Thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause. Two of you are remote listening in. Your pictures are up on the screen, so folks at home know who it is that's serving our school district. 3 of you are in your first year. Others are in a first or second term midway through that. And I just personally want to say, I'm just enormously grateful to have your support, your trust, your collaboration, and your leadership. And there's stories that often get passed to me, or media clips of superintendents working through a challenging time and not often knowing where their school boards are leaning. And that can be incredibly challenging to lead with or unsettling. And for me, it's just such a gift to know that while you absolutely need to challenge and to ask hard questions and to be critical thinkers, you do it with this tremendous amount of trust and support in our staff, in our teachers, in our students in the organization, wanting us to be better all the time. So thank you. It makes us want to work harder and work better and make you proud of our work. So thank you for being an extraordinary school board. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ludwig. I don't think it would be incorrect for me to speak on behalf of the board and say that we do this as a service for the love of students in our schools. And all of us either currently have students attending our schools or recently graduated, and we've all spent countless hours with those students in our schools. So it's an honor to be able to serve in this capacity. And just checking in with Director Thompson, Director Taylor, I can see you. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear us, okay? Yeah, Lewis can. Okay, Chris can. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, very good. So moving forward to the consent agenda. Can I have a motion?
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second it.
Director Wyatt with the motion and Director Sloop with the second. Lily, please call the vote.
Certainly. Kelly Sloop.
Aye.
Chelsea King.
Aye.
Kirsten Wyatt.
Aye.
Christy Thompson.
Aye.
Taylor.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great. So here we are at communications and comments from the audience, and from scanning, it looks like we probably do have some folks here. While Ms. Douglas grabs the sign-up sheet, I'll just read some of our guidelines. First of all, welcome. We're glad that you're here. Thanks for taking time out of your day to be here with us, your evening. Oh, we did the reports. That's what you're showing me. Yeah. Let's go ahead and do what time? Yeah, let's go ahead and do this, and then we'll come back to the report. Forget. All right. So if you are here to make public comment, then you should have signed up on this sheet. So if you're here to make a public comment, you have not done that, then let me know, and we can do that now. This is a time for the board to hear you and to collect information, not to engage in dialogue. So if it appears that we're listening and taking notes and not responding, that's because we're listening and taking notes and not engaging in dialogue at this time. Yeah, so if you want the district or the board to respond to you with some sort of information, just let us know with your contact information so that we can appropriately follow up with you. It's really important that the public comment time is not a time to single out a particular individual, a district employee, or a student. We have a separate complaint process for that. If you have a concern about an individual student or district employee, we can point you to that complaint process. Let's see here. Yeah, please be respectful. We're gonna avoid clapping, cheering, booing, those kinds of things to maintain a certain level of decorum in the boardroom. We have to keep comments to 3 minutes. If you need to say more than what you can say in 3 minutes, you're welcome to submit testimony in writing to us and we'll read it. We're not gonna have any problem with the 45-minute limit, I don't think. There's an order, but we don't need to do that because we have one person signed up this evening. Yeah, that's good. So I'll invite you, Brian. Did I say Labelle? Libel? Libel.
School board members, good evening. Thank you for serving our school district. I'm Brian Lyle. I live at 6353 Haverhill Court, West Lynn. I have 3 children, one of whom attend West Lynn High School. I want to share some thoughts on the school district's updated draft of policy BDDH, public comment at board meetings. The draft policy contains language that caused school board members concern last month and leaves unclear whether the public will be afforded the opportunity to be heard at open meetings. For example, in the first paragraph, the draft says the public has a right to attend open session meetings and may be invited to share comments, ideas, opinions during designated times. It also states in subparagraph 4, a person wishing to provide public comment, if an opportunity is provided by the board during a meeting open to the public. While the school district has assured it is not attempting to restrict the public's ability to communicate with the school board, which may be true, but that doesn't match up with the language in the draft policy. And the school district assurances will play no role in interpreting or enforcing the district policy. The changes I propose continue the current policy's guarantee of public commenting during regular open meetings and any other meetings or sessions in which the board desires public comment. Note that the latter is at the discretion of the board. I recommend that the school board incorporates my changes into the school district's updated draft and approves it as modified. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, seeing no further public comments, we will move on to board reports. I do have several board members told me that they were not going to do board reports, but rather than just make an assumption, perhaps you just call on the person and they can say pass or they have it tonight.
Vice Chair Christy Thompson.
Yeah, I want to go ahead and just say a few things, if that's okay. I just wanted to give a shout out to all of our teachers, our district administrators who are doing everything they can to keep your kids, all of our kids in school. So I just know it has been an effort on everybody's part, every employee, every staff member in our school district. And I, as a board member, just want to say thank you and just applaud you for your efforts and just say it publicly that we just are so appreciative of what the staff, the district office staff is doing, going into schools to keep our schools open. Then the other thing is I just wanted to give a quick shout out to some of our teachers or the staff members at Wood Middle School, Chair King, Director Lewis, myself, Superintendent Ludwig and Assistant Superintendent Soyson had the opportunity to go there on Friday and judge some decorated doors. And, you know, in the spirit of, that sounds like in talking with Autumn Paul, who was the staff member that kind of led us around, that they wanted to come up with an activity that would bring kids to get kids to working together for the good. And so came up with this activity to decorate the doors of classrooms. Each classroom chose a mascot, decorated their door with that mascot and with positive character traits that that mascot would have, positive character traits that would be helpful in a school environment. and then also all of their names. And so I just want to again acknowledge the creative, fun things that are happening in our schools today and always. We know this happens all the time, but that was just something I got to see up close and personal, and it was super fun for me just to see their creative work. And so just want to give that shout out.
Thank you. Director Lewis, Taylor?
I will respectfully pass.
Thank you. Director Kelly Sloop?
I pass.
Thank you. Director Kirsten Wyatt?
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Thank you. Chair King?
Yes, I thank you, Vice Chair Thompson, for that comment. I also just wanted to express that real recognition that we are currently in a all hands on deck mode of operation for our schools. And I know we have superintendents going in and, subbing in classrooms. We have, hired temporary, permanent substitutes. That was a great strategic move we made some time ago that I'm sure is serving us. And just people, we have some administrators here in the room right now. Just thank you so much for everything you're doing to cover where normally you wouldn't cover, and to move, and to just deal with this workforce crisis that we know almost every industry in our nation is facing. And schools are not exempt from what is going on in all the other industries. So thank you so much for, I know we take it one day at a time right now, but it's very much appreciated. So I did want to share that. And then, I think the only other thing that's maybe of interest to folks is that I continue to attend the Oregon School Board Association monthly is having a Zoom gathering for board chairs. And that's been a really valuable way for me to connect with other board chairs from school districts, the size of 100 students in Eastern Oregon, all the way up to, North Clackamas and Portland Public School, really large school districts. So it's really nice just to collaborate with my board chair colleagues in that capacity. That's enough for me. Thanks. Superintendent Ludwig.
Thank you. Well, as we get that PowerPoint up, I just want to recognize that I know for much of the time in between our last meeting and this meeting, we had winter break, which is probably why a number of you don't have much to report on. But I just want to acknowledge that what you also did that was enormously time consuming, but well invested for your site visits, that fortunately you were able to get in before this surge occurred, and you spent hours at each one of your schools, and we did get those wrapped up. And the feedback from administrators was that they felt incredibly supported, that each of you were so attentive and curious and had great insights, and you read each of their school plans and you asked great questions. And I hope on your part, which is what you reported back in November, December, that you felt that deep dive gave you a strong sense of our board goals in action. What does it look like when we write these lofty goals, but then in action? So I just want to acknowledge again that that was much of your work and your reports in November and December, and now here we are turning the calendar page. Also, I was able to get to a virtual conference this weekend. So Friday night attending to a keynote speaker, and then Saturday to a couple sessions. And it was the Oregon Association for Bilingual Education, which is one of the institutions that we do sponsor, the organization that we sponsor. It's where our dual language teachers get very helpful practitioner support and collaboration, and hearing from keynote speakers around how to do that work really well, as well as our teachers who teach English language development. So it's about bilingual education, regardless of what your first language or second or third language is, and how we're all kind of emerging bilinguals in our school district. We raise our children to be emerging bilinguals. So it was a well-organized event. A number of our staff were on the board and put that together. And we had great attendance. I'm looking out in the audience. I don't see, so there's Dr. Barb. So it's about 35 teachers. 38 of our teachers on a Saturday attending a virtual conference on top of everything else they're navigating. And we know that there's some fatigue out there as folks are working really hard on a lot of things. But I think it's a great indication of representation from our district of teachers finding a conference that they know is going to serve them well and great attendance. So, and then also later in that afternoon, I got to do one of my favorite things each year, which is speak at OWALA, which is the Oregon Association for Latino Administrators. Each year I get to speak to their protege group, aspiring administrators. And so we spent the afternoon together with virtual as well. But that was really fun. And it's also a great networking opportunity because we do hire people who are proteges and aspiring administrators, and making those connections are important for a lot of reasons. So it's been a great start to the new year in terms of everyone coming back, opening up classrooms, getting back to learning, and then also seeing this great interest in professional development as well. So here we are. What I'm going to spend the bulk of the time on today is just giving you as a board an update on, sorry, but one of our favorite topics, which is COVID, because a number of updates have come out from CDC or Oregon Health Authority or our own public health department. It can get confusing, and we've sent a number of messages out because they've been coming out rapidly from those organizations, and so we follow suit. So we're just going to go through very briefly each of these so you feel informed. And if you have any questions that you think the public would want to know or things we should clarify, then we can use some of this time to do that. So the first slide, so that we'll kind of go through these as efficiently as we can. Next slide. One of the new terms that you're going to now hear is, instead of the term fully vaccinated, CDC and other health authorities, state authorities are shifting to up-to-date vaccination status because it can evolve. And so what we mean by up-to-date right now is that individuals 18 or older have received those recommended 2 doses as well as the booster. And then of course there are people who are immunocompromised and their care physicians may have asked them to take anything additional to that. And then for youth 5 to 17 years old, that they've completed just the 2 in the series or the 1 if it was Johnson & Johnson's, that primary series. So that's what it means. We're now going to be shifting to this language, are you up to date with your vaccines, and kind of do away with that phrase fully vaccinated, because that was prescribed for a while just to the 2 doses. So that's some new terminology that's coming out that we will be shifting to and using with our families and our staff. The next slide. We've recently sent out messages about the shortened quarantine and isolation periods now. Remember, we shifted from 14 to 10, and then right before winter break, we moved to 7-day. And now we are at an even shorter time period, around 5 days. So just for a reminder, when we talk about quarantine, we're talking about people who have been exposed. So if you're exposed to someone with COVID, you quarantine. If you have COVID, you isolate. So sometimes people interchange quarantine and isolate. We want to keep those really clearly distinct. So quarantining is talking about having been exposed to someone and waiting to see for a period of time if you do develop the symptoms. So back to the PowerPoint, if possible. Thank you. So where we are now still is that those who are up to date with their vaccinations or have had COVID in the last 90 days do not need to quarantine if they've been exposed. Others who would not be vaccinated would need to for at least 5 days. So we're down now to that 5-day period of time, unless they're participating in the district test to stay program. That's a modified quarantine. If they're going to do that, then they show up here and take the test. And if there's no symptoms, the students can be at school in a modified quarantine, meaning they have to wear their mask. They're at school. We're kind of monitoring and making sure there's no symptoms that develop. So that's a program that some families are taking advantage of. And then throughout quarantine, making sure we're wearing well-fitted masks at school And for those in the test to stay program, that does include school events and athletic events. If they cannot wear a mask during one of their athletic activities, they should not participate in that athletic activity while they're in quarantine. Again, that's for unvaccinated test to stay students. And of course, during this time, we continue to watch for symptoms. And then next slide, we've got new guidance around isolation. So isolation is what you do if you have a positive case of COVID. And now that period of time has been reduced to 5 days since the onset of the symptoms. And if you, after 5 days, the student or staff member is fever-free or symptom-free without medication that reduces the fever, they can return to school or to work. If the symptoms persist, then they should continue isolating for another 5 days or longer. And just a reminder that isolation at home, even though it's very challenging to do that when you're living with others, does mean isolating as best as possible and wearing a mask around others. So that's been good news in a lot of ways, is getting that updated information about the reduced isolation and quarantine. And that's largely because the longer we're in this, medical professionals and epidemiologists are noticing that it's really become this peak of time in 5 days when they're noticing someone's going to get contracted. It happens in those 5 days. So they're taking a kind of a calculated risk that we think you're going to be fine in 5 days to come back. Or you'll develop the symptoms if not. Okay, the next slide that we've been communicating about, I mentioned the test to stay program. So that is up and running, and I want to thank our staff for doing an amazing job with that. This is a very busy place. If you come in the mornings, anywhere between 7:30 and noon, we've got a line of cars, and this is so that we don't have this program going on at the school site, and we can just keep it contained here. Family members stay in their cars, and so we're very careful about those protocols. And this is for students who are unvaccinated that have been exposed. We want them to continue being at school, so they participate in this program, and they get a test here to make sure that it's negative. They can be in school then, and we continue to monitor. We have seen the volume increase quite a bit with this surge with Omicron. And so starting tomorrow, I'm just looking out, seeing, we did get a notice out tonight to families that we're going to do an appointment sign up, because we were getting a line of cars out on the main road, and we just want to keep people safe. So we don't want any risky traffic here. And also, we don't want people to have to wait for a long time, so they can just come just prior to their appointment and hopefully get in and out sooner. So we're going to begin that tomorrow. So there's that update. And the next slide. We just received word today that the state OHA has also approved that if a family is in the test to stay program, they can use an at-home iHealth COVID rapid test. So these are going to be sent to school districts, and we'll distribute them to families. So they don't have to come here and wait in line. They can be sent home with a student, and families can take it at home, let us know the results of it, and then again have that modified quarantine. So this is not a test to do screening, which I know a lot of the public is looking for those kind of screening locations. They've got symptoms, they're trying to figure out if they have COVID. This is not for that. This is just for the test to stay program right now. So we did fill out the application for our district to participate, did that right away today, and we're waiting for that approval, and then for those tests to come. And then that would be 2 ways that families can participate in test to stay. They can come here with their child, or they could also go home and test. So we're looking forward to that additional convenience. And then I think last slide. We get a lot of inquiries every day about just does the district offer COVID testing? And I know it's hard to locate some of these testing clinics and sites, whether they're at Walgreens or Safeway or Costco or your provider. Sometimes parents say they call and they have to wait 3 or 4 days. They want to have more efficiency. We just don't have that approval to be that type of a testing site as a school district. We do have approval to be a test and stay site. And so we do have these locations that we're able to send folks to, and hopefully there'll be more of them, or if things change and we can move to being another testing site, then we can look into that. The other reality is this is an enormous addition already to the workload of our nurses and health assistants. No school district imagined being a public health clinic all year long. We've got schools we're running, nurses already are keeping children healthy for just all the other things that they need to do, respond to. And then on top of this, school districts have kind of these quasi health clinics, and it's been a huge workload. And just enormously grateful to our nursing team and our health assistants that are providing these services, in addition to all the contact tracing, phone calls, parents calling with a lot of questions. They're trying to navigate complicated and ever-changing information. And sometimes someone picks up at the school, you know, a little sooner than they might pick up at a clinic. And so I just want to recognize our office staff, our principals, secretaries, who have really become public health support people for so many of our families. In addition to our staff who do a lot of this work in multiple languages and support also to our multilingual families. And then I think just lastly, you are starting to hear that with this surge, and I think today we were over 18,000 cases in Oregon. So it is kind of on a doubling basis in some ways, that it does have an impact on staff. And Chair King, you mentioned that most of the nation is in this staffing crisis. And we are all hands on deck. We are supporting openings and places where there's absences across the school. Every morning there's phone calls. Where do we need to be or send people? We've got secretaries in one school that helps out another school. We've got all sorts of classified staff pitching in, licensed staff, principals teaching in classrooms. All of this to keep schools open and to avoid going to remote learning. And we've begun to see in the news that there are some school districts that, despite all these heroic efforts, just still have a staff shortage. And you have to ask that question of, can you safely open a building in terms of adults to supervise and provide instruction? We may get to that point. We're not there yet as a school district. We've been able to each morning kind of piece things together and kind of check where we are. But it could be that we get to a point where we need to see if a school or a pair of schools need to close temporarily and do some remote learning. Fortunately, we still have a lot of those systems from CDL in our infrastructure. Our staff knows how to do remote learning. And so it's not completely new from ground up, but it is some transition time. And so we'll be sending out a letter tomorrow that just says to our community, we're not there yet, but if you're hearing of places that are, and you're wondering what it would look like for us, you know, we do have those kinds of plans and preparations ready to go if need be. And it would be a last resort, so we're doing everything we can to avoid that. But we would notify families or staff, teachers, and the office would need a couple days to shift everything to remote, and then we would get the synchronous and asynchronous starting up and going. And teachers would be in touch with families on how to do that. We would get Chromebooks distributed during these preparation days. Meal service wouldn't stop, but it would be pick up at the school. So those kind of details we would get out to folks. But we do know how to do those systems. We did them last year. It would just be going back to those for a very small temporary period of time. And I think what you're hearing, most school districts are starting with like a week because they're using that new 5-day guidance of quarantine and isolation, and hoping that if they did have to, would a week be enough to get enough staff back. So we're hearing some districts are doing, and I just want you as a board to know that we're prepared if we have to, and that we'll let our community know tomorrow in the letter what that would look like if in the event of we have to do some temporary. I'm going to pause there Because the last slide is really just, we're gonna see if we can host a third vaccination clinic. We put in an interest with Clackamas County Public Health to see if we can host again, and this would be for vaccinations as well as boosters. And if we can provide that to the community and we have a location that makes it convenient for families and able to do that, we're happy to do that. So I'll just stop there and see what questions you might have, or if you think the community might still have some questions.
I have a question. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Director Taylor, go ahead, please.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to first and foremost say great job, Dr. Ludwig, on all the work that you and the staff have done. I think a lot of the emails that we receive that are more rumor-based rather than evidence-based around what is going on inside of our school district just because of what's going on in the news. So I applaud you and the rest of your staff for what you're trying to do and what is being done to keep kids in school. So thank you for that, first and foremost. My question centers around what is the impact on our budget for us trying to provide all of these additional services above and beyond what has already been provided. So is that having a severe impact on the budget, or is that part of the funds that we've received for this pandemic to be able to service our community better?
Thank you, great question. So the federal funds that we received for COVID through those emergency funding sources, those have been expended. So those are primarily sent last year and have been expended and allocated for, and we had board reports about how we were using those funds, and they've been already designated. Those funds were given in proportion to free and reduced lunch for poverty status or Title I status. So as a school district, we got maybe a more limited amount of those funds than maybe other neighboring school districts. So the amount varied. And we did allocate a portion of that for, if you recall last year, going to online learning and some of our resources and health assistance and hiring additional nurse. So when we talk about our costs for this year, they are coming out of the general budget, these health assistants that we've hired. We do see it as a good investment because it's taken some of that load off of our nurses who are able to provide them services beyond COVID to all those other specialized nursing care areas. So our health assistants are supporting their training under their supervision. So health assistance, and then we are utilizing some of our grant money, our student investment account money for a few of the health assistants. And then these home tests and these tests, those are coming to us at no cost. They have been either provided federally to each state and distributed, or states have found funds for them. So we are not at any cost currently for any of the tests that we are giving. So really right now it's personnel costs. And I would say most districts have increased their personnel to manage this.
Thank you.
One point of clarification. I think I understand this because I've been listening to you talk about this stuff quite a bit. Yes, year and a half, and this past week as well. Thank you again. I know I've said it before, but this has been an enormous amount of information coming from the county public health and state public health that you've had to digest, synthesize, and turn around and apply. A lot of different changing things over the months. But just for clarification, the test to stay program that you're talking about, that's for unvaccinated students only, right? There's different protocols for vaccinated students around quarantining, things of that nature.
Yeah, and the reason that test to stay became an approved modified quarantine is because the state really wanted students to stay in school. And in that effort of keeping kids in school, they said, well, vaccinated students who get exposed but don't show any symptoms can stay in school if they're exposed to someone. But that risk of an unvaccinated student possibly getting it and needing to be monitored, they felt that because schools have these layers of mitigation efforts like social distancing and universal masking, that we were creating enough of a modified quarantine situation at school, that as long as students were wearing masks and social distancing, and in that those layers of mitigation, the proper ventilation and airflow, that we've got those layers, that they felt students, even unvaccinated who were exposed, could stay at school. But they have to first take a test to show that they're negative after exposure, and then kind of be in a monitoring, status for those days when they are in that modified form.
And I just have one other question. Do we know what's the trigger point or the capacity at which would move the district to decide to close a school or something like that had occurred? Or is that like sort of at the moment figuring out like, can we cover it or not cover it?
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot. Is there a magic number or percentage? And collectively, we as an administrative group felt that for a district our size and the way that we actually move and support, and maybe it's not true for a larger district or a very small district that has all its own unique situations, but for our district being this kind of medium size and our nimbleness, that a number was not what we were waiting for, but this ability to actually then mobilize. So as long as we can keep mobilizing and shifting staff, given the situation, we want to do that and keep kids in school and avoid remote learning for such a short period of time that this situation would be. And just to say a number triggers it wouldn't be true for us all the time, because we can maybe cover that number the next, if the situation were right. If 4 schools don't need their permanent subs one day and we can shift them over to another school, you can have a very different situation. But if one week there's quite a disbursement and we're really struggling, we might be in that situation. So what I would say now is, we're at about 12% of absences, and we're able to kind of manage that. But we watch every night the numbers, and we watch early in the morning. And as I know, exhausting for our administrators, every morning feels like a 4:30 snow day. You're waking up wondering by 4:30, 5 o'clock, what calls am I getting? And what's the day going to look like? And every single day, our administrators are getting up incredibly early and then sending those numbers out to all of us, and then mobilizing people so that by the time school starts, we've got things covered. There may be a tipping point where we get to a place where it's starting to stretch even thinner, and then we're watching and it all of a sudden reaches a point with the school that we hear, not just for one day, but it looks like for the period of a week, that critical number of staff maybe can't come, and we need to close a school or move a school to remote learning.
Can I ask a question, Chair King?
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Ludwig, during your presentation, and I apologize if I heard anything wrong. Sometimes I have a little hard time deciphering every word, but you made it sound like if we had to go remote, it would probably only be remote possibly for 5 days due to that's what the new quarantine is. And so then my question goes to the 2 days for teachers to transition. And if you could just speak to that, where you came up with the 2 days, is that one day on the front side for them to transition onto into remote, and then one day on the backside to transition back to in school, and just the thought process that went into that number of days? Because just in my mind, I can hear parents possibly questioning, well, they lose 2 days and then they only get 3 days that week, and just wanting a little more clarification there.
Thank you. And I just want to first be clear that the 5-day shift of isolation quarantine could mean that we feel like we're looking at a week, but it could mean that we're not looking at a week. So we could move to remote learning for 2 weeks, but that 5-day shortened quarantine and isolation does become a game changer in a lot of ways, because it could be just enough time to recruit back some staff and move the school back to in-person. So that's the clarification on that one. I apologize if it sounded like we would only move, for 5 days, but I referenced the 5 days because of that shortened quarantine and isolation factor. At the beginning of the year, when we were trying to forecast out with our associations, classified and certified, at that time, staff were vaccinated, students weren't. And we were looking at student absences and making agreements around what would cause a class to maybe learn from home. And it became really clear that we had a large number of absences. What if only 1 or 2 students needed to quarantine or isolate at home? We wouldn't go to a hybrid or CDL. We would just offer them accommodations to still access their learning. What if it was half the class? What if it was a full class? So we were making these projections and agreements with our employees around workload and working conditions. And interestingly, back then we said, there could be a very rare occasion that what if a whole school had to quarantine or isolate? What would that shift back to remote learning, and the movement to that need in terms of support and transition? And we did in letters of agreement with both of our associations. We said if it's just one teacher in that moment that needs to shift the class, maybe a day, but if a whole school, we would give 2 days. And so those were signed agreements, letters of agreements that associations and the superintendent board entered into this year as we thought about what does it mean again for a whole school to transition, not just one teacher, but several, distribution of Chromebooks, moving back to Zoom setup, communicate with families, do they have hotspots and internet? We thought back to, we needed those 2 days when we were in CDL last year, and envisioned that those 2 days could be helpful again. So it's in our agreements, Director Thompson, that we did make with our employees at the beginning of the year, and that we believe are still appropriate for the situation.
Thank you for that clarification. And then, so my question is it just 2 days to transition from in-person to online, but then there's no, there won't be any teacher days when we transition back to in-person? Is that my understanding? Or is it 2 on each end?
It's 2 at the beginning. So we did
Okay.
not envision that transition back would take as much setup as when you first go into it, and there's new families that haven't experienced it and new students that haven't experienced it, and getting those systems up and going. And then when we've distributed Chromebooks, you have to get them all out, but then you don't often have to collect them back in that same kind of urgency. And so we can take our time and not need as much to reconstruct back to in-person.
Thank you for all of that clarification. I appreciate it.
And in the event of, if it's a school, much more information with details would come from that school, depending on high school, middle school, primary school. What we're just queuing up and preparing is people are reading the news. They're hearing about some schools in other districts not far from us that have had to make this shift, maybe wondering, is our district prepared for something like that? If we had to do it, and the letter tomorrow is going to acknowledge that, yes, we're prepared in the event of, but we're not there yet. And then my last slide is just actually a flyer that each of you in person have on your desk. And those of you at home, just some notification that we have moved our equity summit to be a virtual event. It's still on the 24th. It's your work session day. This is your work session. It's your hosting this event. And we will have opening speaker Cole Gill and keynote speaker Philippa Cruz. We have some student music. And so we're hoping for a really lovely shared experience. And now that it's virtual, we think we can also accommodate some breakout rooms and have some interaction as well. So thank you very much. Concludes my report.
Okay, so we will move on to the business office and Dr. Hughes.
Good evening. So this year we have two budget committee position vacancies. Last December 6th, during regular school board meeting, you already appointed Inga and for position number 1. This position number 4 is still open. We have one application coming apply for position number 4. We have Ginger Fitch here with us. The board might have for us.
Dr. Hughes, can you speak a little louder? Just because we don't have a microphone.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Fitch, would you like to speak?
I want to add to school board appreciation, also how much I appreciate the work that you all are doing to keep our schools functioning, both in the short term and long term, and keeping our students educated. I'm just glad to become a part of that team again by serving on the budget committee.
Thank you so much for applying. I had the privilege of serving up here with you for 4 years, so it's always nice that you stepped aside, you gave an opportunity for someone else to apply, and now you're stepping back in. And that type of institutional history that you bring with you to the budget committee, that's valuable. So thank you. Should we just, I think, entertain a motion at this point? Okay. Yeah, so I will move that we appoint Ginger Fitch to the open budget committee position number 4.
I second.
Okay, we've got, I made the motion and Director Wyatt's got the second. And if there's no further discussion, then we can call the vote.
So Kelly Sloat. Aye. Chelsea King.
Aye.
Kirsten Wyatt.
Aye.
Christy Thompson.
Aye.
Louis Taylor.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's just good to see you. Thank you.
So tonight I have 2 items that I would like to present to you. The first one is the update on financial report for general fund. Next, please. So in here, according to the email from Oregon Department of Education that sent out to us on November 15 regarding to the fiscal year 21-22 state school fund payment that they estimate for our school district, the number a little bit higher. So the first column on the left-hand side, that is the adopted budget that the school board adopted on June 3rd, 2021, with the estimate state school fund in the dollar amount of 57.9 million. The next column is the information the district received from ODE on June 24, which is almost a month after our budget adopted. Gives us the estimate of 59.7 million. Then during this year, as of October 18, when we have all the enrollment settled out, the estimate state school fund is 52.5 million. And then the last column on the right, that is the up-to-date information that ODE have as of the second quarter for the fiscal year 2021. That number gives us a higher in the ADMW, which provide us the estimate state school fund in the amount of 55.2 million. So when we compare that number with the number that we have in the adopted budget, the decline is 2.7 million. The report that I provided to the board in November, it show about over 4 million. The difference between the report today and the report in November, we have two reasons for that. The first reason is the Oregon Department of Education using the highest ADMW for between 1920 and 2020, no, between 21, 22 and 2021, which are our highest ADMW. So because of our 2021 have 10,257 ADMW and 2021 have higher with the 10,543. So based on that information, the estimate state school fund for our district is at 65.2 million. So that is the revenue based on the state school fund. On the general fund expenditure, there are some shifting in general fund expenditure regarding to salary and benefits. So therefore, our next slide is. So with that, you will see on the income statement report, you will see the total revenues is 134.2 million. That is a year-end projection number that I have. And because of the shift in expenditure regarding to salary and benefits, we will see an increase in salary in year-end projection compared to the adopted budget. However, if you look at the payroll association, you won't see much difference because we have the pension bond 2021 A series that have reduced the tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 rate. So with that, the estimate for ending fund balance for this year is around 17 million or 12.8% of our total revenue based on the current report that we received from Oregon Department of Education. So the number is very fluctuation, and I will do my best to give you updates every month during the financial report. So before I move on to the next items, I will stop here and see if you have any questions for me.
Dr. Hughes, could you also, you mentioned there were two reasons you saw the increase since the last report. One was that we've got the higher of the two fiscal years. The other is that overall in the state, the enrollment went down. So the per pupil funding got recalculated.
Correct. Yes. So the first reason is ODE went back and run the second periods on the ADM, resulting in an increase of 6.25 ADMW for us. And then the second one is the ADMW, of course, the state declined. So therefore, the dollar amount that dedicated for ADM increased for our school. They have formula for each school district. And the formula that they use for our school district gives us about $200 more per ADMW. So because of that, it factored in the increase for the estimate in the safety factor.
I do have a question if nobody else does right now. my apologies for not thinking of this question sooner. So if you need some time to prepare, I'm happy to take the answer later. But often when we approve the budget at the beginning of the fiscal year, there are certain moves that we would like to make, but because we don't know what's going to exactly be coming from the state, we sort of table them and say, these are the moves we know we can make. These are the moves we would like to make if we had, the funds to do it. So when I see this ending fund balance and see the numbers coming in, the place my brain goes is, are there moves that we wanted to make when we approved that budget that we designated as potential moves that we could do at this point in time that would facilitate the operations for this academic year? Does that question make sense?
Yes, totally. And normally this one end up in the superintendent budget message. The superintendent budget message will lay out that based on the current information, these are the programs that we support and funding. If we have more money, we will support this program. If we have less money, we will cut this program. So it's all say very clear in the message.
Yeah.
So I think a caution for us and for our budget committee is this sustainable funding or is this still residual from the federal relief funding? Because we expended and used some of that federal relief funding, which took pressure off of our general budget. Because if you look at the chart, even when we adopted the budget, we were looking at a $4.7 million ending fund balance. When the audit and the books balanced and we had confirmation of where things landed and kind of trued up, we had that little bit more. We don't anticipate more of this kind of relief that we got infused in our system in the last year that took pressure off of our general budget, allowed us to get the PPE, get help, move and not do some of the things out of our general budget. So we had some relief. We're not going to get that every biennium. We also were surprised that the grants came in at the level that they came in and even a little higher. That excise tax that funds SIA came in very robustly. And what our initial projection was, it actually surpassed it. So we've had some bouts of really strong investment, but we're not going to get some of those same infusions. So the grants will stay, but at some point we won't live with this kind of a balance. So we have to be really careful if we're going to put something into the system. Is it something we can sustain going forward? And we also have a new school. We're going to be opening our new high school. So some of this is coming at a good time that we can get some initiatives going as we live into then sustaining that 16th school as well.
So
So those will be good conversations to have with the budget committee this spring.
So in the budget book, I provide a chart to show the ending fund balance for the last 5-year minimum, and I can go to 10-year too. On the average, our ending fund balance held between 5 to maximum 9 million. So like Dr. Lett was saying, that last year carried on to this year because we had extra funding and the big dollar in the SIA grant.
We also have some positions that are still open. I think I'm looking over at our COO. Is it 7 in our operations department that we still haven't been able to fill?
No, it's 8. We lost 1.
And then our para educators, we've approved way more in our budget than we've been able to fill. And so we've got, that's ended up with a decrease in our expenditure than we were even anticipating. Now we've, cobbled things together, but it's not our plan to have 8 vacancies. I think our community heard when we had to suspend Saturdays and weekends of coverage. And that's part of just the personnel shortage that we're seeing as well.
So the next items I have is the Distinguished Project Award that we received from the GFOA. This is the second year in a row that we received this award. I wasn't had the opportunity to present this great news to you last month, but I forwarded the email from the GFOA. When they review the document, budget document from our district, they look at the policy, the financial plan, operation guide, and communication device. And they have a committee to review throughout the budget and provide feedback for us. So I just want to take the opportunity to thank you, the staff in the business office, the budget committee, and to the board for your leadership, for the operation, the time and energy that you put into the budget and help us become, receive the distinguished award for this. Thank you so much.
Congratulations to you and your team for that award.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chair King, can I say something?
Please.
Thank you. Dr. Hughes, I just want to say, in addition to thanking your office staff and the budget committee, but also just thank you to you for your leadership that led into this award. So I just want to acknowledge your leadership behind the award in combination with the work that the business office put into it as well. So thank you.
Director Thompson.
Very good. So we can move forward to the board policy. And this is where we're taking the second look at the proposed policy update for BBH. And perhaps, Dr. Ludwig, if you'd like to speak to the item first, we can do that.
Sure.
And then we can have a motion before we have further dialogue amongst the board.
Yeah, just a summary. So in your packet, you have the original policy that was adopted in 2010, re-adopted in 2016, 2018, that we were taking a look at. So you have that it's got a big watermark that says delete, but you can see what the original is in our policy as it stands. And then you have the proposed policy recommendation from OSBA, vetted by their attorneys and our attorneys. And we brought it forward last month, and there was quite a discussion, some suggestions about strike-throughs, alternate language, some questions and wonders to take to legal counsel. So we did that work over the last few weeks, and that's what you'll see in here. You'll see in the blue are strike-throughs that were proposed either by a board member or board members, and then in the red, clarification about the distinction between oral comment and written comment, noting that public comment is always welcome in written form. So it's not that you as a board are saying no public comment. I think where you were trying to make a determination is when would you have oral in addition to written, and when would you just have written public comment? So that some suggestions on putting those clarifications in, which we did our best to capture in the minutes and then work that in. Ms. Douglas and I then did meet with the chair and the vice chair and reviewed this draft and said, did we capture what we believe occurred in the last meeting in terms of people's input? And so we looked that over, and our attorneys looked it over. And so now you have in front of you again that draft with a little bit more of the work reflected from the last meeting. And that's in front of you. So I would say, you know, if the discussion, the decision lands pretty close to what you got here, you could make a decision tonight. If you do some more substantive kinds of changing or rewording, you might want to have that vetted again by legal counsel. And you could do a third reading or brought back a third time if you want. that's your discussion now.
Thank you. So entertaining a motion.
I move we adopt policy BBH as proposed in today's packet.
I'll second. So Director Wyatt's the motion, and I'm the second. Yes, and we can have dialogue. Looking at my computer, and then folks who are remote.
Chair King, can I interject something?
Yes.
Thank you. One thing after we had met that I noticed that we had not included in the new draft was if you look down at the old draft, public participation in board meetings, the old, under number 2, it talks about individuals' commentary will be limited to 3 minutes with a total time for public comments limited to 45 minutes unless extended by the board. And that is something that we didn't carry through to the new draft, the ability to extend the public comment period past 45 minutes if okayed by the board, if the board votes on that. And that would be something that I would be in favor of adding if other people felt like that was something that they would like to see added back in as well. That opportunity to be able to expand beyond the 45 minutes.
I'm not in opposition of that.
Director Thompson, would it be second sentence in item number 7? And so we could just add a comma and then state that we could add more time if needed.
It could read, public comment during a board meeting is limited to 45 minutes unless extended by the board and depending on the agenda at any specific meeting. You could just insert that qualifier there.
I support that change.
Yeah, and I apologize for not, when we were going over it together, that just didn't cross my mind until I went back over preparing for the meeting and again, rereading all of the drafts and remembered that we'd had that opportunity mentioned in our first draft or the original draft.
Yeah, so I'm hearing board members saying they support that. So I think, if we entertain an amendment to the motion, or you can redact the initial motion and make a new motion, members procedurally easiest. And I'll say I did notice that shift before, and I do believe that under Robert's rules, I think we are afforded the right to extend public comment anyway without having a policy, which is part of, I didn't really pay much attention to it, but whatever the board wants with that.
I still have,
The motion as exists, or are we amending the motion before we continue? Because your comment is about a different topic. Either redact your motion and then make a new motion, or you could move to amend your first motion.
I move to amend the initial motion to include amended language to section 7 to allow extension of public comment period in sentence 2.
Yeah, that's, do we have a second?
I'll second.
So there is that amended motion, that I believe that's procedurally enough, yeah. We didn't vote or anything the first time, so it should be good. Okay, so would you please just state the exact clause that you added with this amended motion?
The updated item 7 in the public comment at board meetings policy BBH would read, a person giving public comment is limited to an established time limit of 3 minutes. Public comment during a board meeting is limited to 45 minutes unless extended by the board and depending on the agenda at any specific meeting.
Good. Okay, Director Slip, did you have some?
Yes, so looking back on our
original public participation in board meetings. I would like to be consistent in that it says, because the board desires to hear the viewpoints of citizens throughout the district, it shall offer suitable time at all regular board meetings for citizens to be heard. And I know we were trying to clarify that a little bit with this new policy. I still feel that it's not clear because it still says, even in the top part, it says the public has the right to attend public meetings held in open session and may be invited to share comments, ideas, and opinions. And then on point 4, a person wishing to provide public comment if an opportunity is provided by the board during the meeting open to the public. I would like to amend that we just divide it out. I know like some work sessions we won't. Just change it where we allow public comment in our regular open board meetings, and then choose or desire to allow comment at our work sessions. And at least differentiate. I want to be transparent and allow the community to have public comment on a regular board meetings. I just feel like there's a loophole if we use those words in that where it says may be invited.
So I hear what you're saying, and I think what we could do, I don't know if you have further comments or questions, or if that's your primary one. I was thinking procedurally, what we could do is, because that's going to require an amended motion or a vote on this motion and then a separate motion or something procedurally. So until we go down that road, did you have anything else, or is that your primary?
And just to clarify, Director Sloop, are you talking about oral public comment or oral and written? Your concern is about oral public comment being provided at regular board.
Yes, correct.
Because written public comment is always
Right,
taken.
correct.
Okay.
So I was just referring to our original policy, where it's just clearly stated, where it's that we offer public viewpoints suitable at all meetings, regular meetings.
Do you feel like that? So I feel like the first paragraph after the subheading procedures for oral public comment provide additional clarification of what that sentence, what that sentence is saying. And that language does talk about how oral public comment at regular board meetings, will be offered. And then I feel like it opens it up further from what we previously had to say that work sessions or special meetings may include that opportunity. So for me, that was what gave me that additional comfort that could be used a loophole because we're explicit in that first paragraph. And so I don't know if that's a way, and if we point to that as we talk to community members who might have a concern about the lack of openness.
Right. So at first I thought, okay, we're addressing that, but then under 4, then we added if an opportunity is provided. We're not very specific. So then I was feeling that again, we're creating a loophole.
So I'd like to contribute something to the conversation, and maybe we can hold this and so just a little bit of dialogue around what I'm looking at. What I'm seeing when I read this policy, first of all, one of the main reasons we opened this policy up is because of a House bill that passed that requires that we provide this remote public testimony time for required person. That really spearheaded, to my understanding, the revisit of this policy. And so, true Linn-Wilsonville fashion, we are going to do it to the very best of our ability and make sure all the I's are dotted and so forth. The truth is that, as I understand it, is that statute does not require that we receive public comment. It requires that we operate in public to be transparent, but there's no legislation that says that we must receive public comment. So in fact, this policy is quite extensively demonstrating all the ways that we are, remaining accessible, writing, orally, at regular meetings. So there's like the statute part of it. And then there's just the culture part. I've been on this board for 7 years. We've always had public comment at every regular meeting. And I've sat through long periods of public comment, often with people saying the same thing over and over and over again. Yeah. So like we have this legacy also of listening to the public. I've read sometimes from emails and so we are operating in this really accessible fashion. We are listening to our public. I'm inclined, and I think I illustrated this with the last time we talked about this, not to put things into policy that are a lot more restrictive than what the law says, and to keep it as much cut and dry as we can. So I'm okay with this idea of like if the public may be invited. I trust that that's in our district goal number 3. And then we have a legacy of behaving in that way. And I don't anticipate that will change. I don't think this policy precludes, the public from addressing this. So that's not to say like you don't need to amend it anymore. But I think that we're meeting the goals listening to the public with the way the policy is written here.
My recollection too, that sentence in the first paragraph about the may is there because you have several different types of meetings. You have regular meetings, work sessions, and special meetings. And you may invite people to share their comments at these meetings. And what you've designated in here is that at your regular meetings, you will accept oral comment, but that at your special or work sessions, you may or may not, and you communicate with each other. That may be somewhere where you decide not to take oral comment, but you'll always take written. So that may up at the very beginning is setting the stage for there may be some meetings where we may or may not. At the regular meeting, we always will. At these other two, we may or may not. Or always take written comment. And that again, the legislation was about if you're taking comment in person and now you're moving also to offer meetings online, you have to have the same opportunity for remote public comment as you have set up for in-person. So if you're doing oral in person, you have to have oral remote. Doing written in person, written none and none. So that's what also the legislation was about, some about equity with that.
No, I agree with that. I'm just asking for more clarification when it's being referred to in the regular board meeting.
Okay. So the board establishes the following procedures for oral public comment at regular board meetings held in open session. Is there a revision of that sentence?
The options at this point are either the person who made the motion can, this is where sometimes they have Robert's rules experts who attend these meetings. The person who made the motion can either redact or vote on the original motion, and if it fails, then you can make a different motion. So something like that procedurally needs to happen if you want to amend the original motion. Post and edit to the policy to a motion.
And while I understand the spirit of where you're coming from, I feel like the language sufficiently does that. And so I'm not willing to amend my initial motion at this point. And would like discussion to continue unless others would like to vote and then potentially pursue the re.
Yes,
Yes, the motion, yes.
I'm just looking at our 2 people who are on Zoom and just checking in to see if you want further dialogue or where we are right now with you.
I'm listening to the 3 of you, and I think you have it handled.
Get that on record, please.
I am in support of the document as it reads, but I would also be in support if, my fellow board members, if enough of them felt like it needed more clarification to make sure the public knows if there was a way to make it more open to, we will always take, public comment at regular meetings, may or may not at work sessions. If someone feels like we need to be more specific in that. As I read it, I feel like it does say that, but again, I'm also open and flexible to changing the language up if enough board members feel like we need to.
Okay, so I think what I'm reading here is a large amount of flexibility, but also we have a large amount of, general buy-in to this, motion that's on the table. I think the best way to do it procedurally would probably be to call a vote for the motion that's on the table. If it passes, then we'll move forward, and if it doesn't, then we can propose another motion. Okay?
Can I ask one more question? Because I did have another potential item for amendment. So do we vote on this? Do we vote on the motion as it stands for, and then I will change it?
I think in the spirit of us having a fully informed vote on the motions on the table, why don't you tell us what the other motion that potentially would be coming up if this one fails would be, so that we can vote.
Thank you. Issue I've become more aware of is especially related to people who work in law enforcement and the judicial branch, and then more sensitively, people who are dealing with any sort of harassment or stalking or personal safety threat, moving away from having folks state their specific address on the record in a public meeting, and instead having that public comment that just state their city of residence. And so in item 6, we talk about a person speaking during the public comment portion of the meeting should state their name, comma, address, comma, and then so forth. And I understand the intent of wanting to understand if folks coming to meetings are residents of our community, but I think we can get to that by changing that from address to city of residence to provide that additional level of protection that someone might need if they're feeling unsafe. And so it's relatively minor, but I feel like instead of having a state or street address, we just say Westland, Wilsonville, Wellington, we still get a sense of if they were in district.
Okay, kind of reading the room.
I can understand that concern that Director Wyatt brought up. Just with the day and age that we're living in, I see that being a valid, concern for some people stepping forward. I don't know if Dr. Ludwig can speak to the need or the history or the specific address, if that's how you've approached that in the past when we've had people who, I feel like I remember being a part of board meetings where someone didn't feel like giving their address because they were concerned, and we didn't make them. We kind of made that exception on a case-by-case basis. So Dr. Ludwig, I don't know if you can speak to what we've done in the past or if it is required to have the address.
I think if the language that's there, whether they are a resident of the district and the one that has a strike through, has also been vetted and is fine by our legal counsel. It's just it's a preference if you wanted to just go to somehow verify that they are residents. Gets at the piece of, are we hearing from our constituents, or is this a group that's visiting from out of state? And we're trying to discern what our patrons are wanting here, or address. So either one of those would pass muster by our legal counsel, it's fine. On the occasion when a speaking patron has not felt comfortable and they have said, I don't feel comfortable giving the address for my children to go to such and such school, the board has accepted that. And so it could be in the disclaimers that you read, as we do want to know if you're residents, but it could, Chair King always reads that long list of kind of informal procedures or decorum that guides the meeting. you could add something there that says, when we do ask you to give your address and for some reason you are unable, or please just let us know. So we know what you're, but also put it there. We have had an occasion when folks have not been able to, and the board has been incredibly accepting, so a public comment has not turned anyone away.
So just trying to figure out how to proceed in the most graceful fashion possible. One option is that we can go ahead and vote on the motion as reads. I'm thinking of this now, like there's, potential proposed edit, another potential proposed edit. So either we're editing now, and we're amending a motion, or we're voting on a motion and making it a motion. The withdrawal motion.
Okay, so I would like to withdraw my motion to revisit the appropriate motion to adopt the version of PDPH that we proposed.
All right, so there's no longer a motion on the table. So I move that we adopt policy BPH as presented with the following 2 amendments. The first being in item 6, changing the word address to city of residence, and the second being in item 7, adding an amendment or an edit to sentence 2 in item 7, so it should read, public comment during a board meeting is limited to 45 minutes unless extended by the board, depending on the agenda at any specific meeting.
Wait for a second.
Yeah, I'm kind of.
Oh, sorry, I'll second. I was on mute.
I could see Christine was just trying to kind of feel into the situation here. All right, so Director Wyatt has a motion and Vice Chair Thompson has a second. I think we can call a vote. Okay, I think we can.
Kelly Slate,
No.
Chelsea King,
Aye.
Kirsten Wyatt,
Aye.
Christy Thompson,
Aye.
Chris Taylor.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. At this point, we're at the 90-minute mark, which for me means a short recess. So I'm going to call a 5-minute break and we'll reconvene at 7:43. All right, I'm reconvening the meeting of West Linn-Wilsonville Board of Directors. And we are now on to Department of Operations, Mr. Pat McGrath.
Good evening, board members. Before you tonight, you have a resolution for board resolution 2021-08. It's prepared by the district legal counsel Miller Nash for the authorization to execute a purchase and sales agreement between the district and the city of West Linn for real property at 1275 Rosemont Road, or commonly known as Oppenheimer Field. On August 18th, we entered into a non-binding letter of intent with the city to develop this purchase and sales agreement. In that agreement, there are the terms and conditions that we have found acceptable after review with our legal counsel and have met the direction of the board to this point. And it has been reviewed by our legal counsel, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. Yeah, this is definitely a topic we've been exploring for some time, so it's not new to the board. I think that probably the best option for us right now is to have a motion on the table.
I motion that we adopt resolution number 2021-08, the purchase and sale agreement for the Oppenlander property.
Right, Vice Chair Wilson has the motion and Director Taylor has a second. And let's have some discussion or questions out there. So to clarify, this sale would go forward pending the approval of a City of Westland bond measure that's in May 2022 ballot, is that correct?
Correct.
And I think one of the things I'm most interested in kind of comes down to the goal for us as the sellers of the property, recognizing that it's a unique situation where as local school board members who might be called on for community building investment, like a local bond measure, similar to how we look to our counterparts that serve on city councils to support bond measures that we might pursue. But it seems like we're in a unique situation as the seller to not advocate for a bond measure that potentially benefits the organization that we report to. So I would love to know if there's any, have there any kind of research or legal advice been given on the appropriate role for a school board member to play in advocating for a bond measure that would result in the sale of our property.
So I did pose this question to our legal counsel about what the role that both the district and the board could play. And their guidance and advice, frankly, is that as the seller, we would be almost neutral in our comments. The board's actions tonight, whether you vote to pass the resolution or to not pass the resolution, would be your public position on this topic. But there are many legal and ethical paths that you would avoid by remaining silent. If you should take a public position, it could potentially turn it into an ethical question, as well as how, the basic question, is it appropriate for a seller to lobby? So their advice is to let your vote stand as your position on this public sale of this property to the city and remain neutral from there on out.
Wonderful, thank you so much for that clarification. I think my only pause partially is just to see if anybody from the board has, anything, so I'm just leaving a little bit of silence, even though sometimes you might want to fill it, just give people a chance to process some of the information. And I think the only thing coming up for me is just, I'm going to vote in favor. I'm pleased that the district is in a position where we had this land, it was available to the community for so long. And that we can, sell it, which is, of course, as a purpose of, land banking, and make moves that will be more strategic for the growth of our district. And yeah, I think this agreement we heard from the public about, wanting that attempt to keep it as public lands through the city of Westland. So I appreciate that question. I have not thought about that. So that'll be definitely, I think, something I'll be more curious about as we get closer to time. I think it extends the opportunity to the people of Westland to decide if they want to purchase and maintain this piece of land. Thank you for your work. I know it's been a long haul and diligent.
It has. I should note and comment that should the voters reject the sale, the purchase and sale agreement, should they reject the bond, the purchase and sale agreement becomes null and void. so that it is all contingent on the voters' approval of the bond.
Chair King, can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. And Director Wyatt, thank you so much for that question. Again, I hadn't thought about that, so really appreciate you bringing that up. I am wondering, I know that part of going forward with this is that we had an appraisal done of the property last year, and that if we were pushing the bond, if they were pushing it off to the election or the in May, that then we would have a new appraisal done. And just out of curiosity, has that appraisal been done? Just wondering if the appraised value rose at all. I don't know if that's something that can be shared in public meeting or shared now, or if we have that information.
We currently do not, the new appraisal is not complete. The district and the city agreed mutually on a single appraiser. That appraisal is in progress. The district has provided the new appraiser all of the information, historical information that they need to make that appraisal. I would expect that within the next week to 10 days, because the city has their own timeline to get the information out to the voters of West Linn about what the dollar value is and any improvements they want to make. And their goal was to have it by February 1st. So we do not have the appraisal yet, but I do expect it to.
Great, thank you.
And that will be the dollar amount that goes onto the measure.
That is in the purchase and sales agreement. The appraised value will be the dollar amount.
Yeah, I think the risk that, both parties take in doing this, it's not without its risks. Definitely, I think both parties are being responsive to what we heard from the public of the desire to try to keep it, publicly owned land. So they'll go before the voters of West Linn and decide, how serious they are about that.
I think I would just add to that, the land belongs to the district, which incorporates Wilsonville and West Linn, and this is being an offer for one of the cities to purchase it. So it's not that all of the public may feel they have access to, but definitely one of the cities is purchasing.
Yeah, and the dollars from the purchase would go to benefit both communities, West Linn and Wilsonville, should it pass. I think we can call a vote. Yeah.
Kelly Slue. Aye. Chelsea King.
Aye.
Kirsten Wyatt. Aye. Christy Thompson.
Aye.
Chris Taylor.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great, motion passes.
Could I add, the purchase and sale agreement, that is a legal document. The resolution speaks to all the elements of it, but it is a document on its own. And so that we would post that on the website and we could make sure you have a copy of that. So.
And in fact, the city has posted this on their website already. So we would likely want to do the same.
They're about a month ahead of us. They've already had this discussion, made their decision, had their resolution, and this our meeting.
Right. And I just wonder, in the spirit of being good neighbors, might it be a good idea for the chair to send the mayor and council of West Linn the explanation that we talked about tonight of why the school board will not actually be supporting a bond measure to improve one of the communities that we serve. And so, I mean, I don't think that's anything too formal, but perhaps it's just a way to articulate that this is a unique situation as it relates to improving the communities that we serve. Thank you for that idea. I think that we need to explore what that might look like, and that being a future move between now and the bond, the measure going for the voters.
Okay,
All right.
that item is closed. I do have a second item.
Right.
And that is the annual pesticide application report, or better known as the IPM report, as required by board policy EBB in compliance with the district's adopted integrated pest management program. Annual report is submitted for your review. Each application was made after an evaluation both by our grounds lead and our IPM coordinator that mechanical methods have failed to eradicate the weeds. And it is only after the assessment is done by both of those individuals that an application will be made. All applications were properly noticed, and of course, all the protocols that are required in the IPM program were followed. We made 14 applications this year. I will say, if you look to the report, our usage did go up from the previous year. And that's in direct response to the COVID-19 pandemic. There were actually 5 months of time that the grounds department did no grounds work, none whatsoever. And they were supporting schools in moving furniture and filling in for custodians. And so the weeds did take over. They did get ahead of us this year. I would expect this to be an anomaly, but it is factual this year. We also made 5 emergency applications in response to flying, stinging insects, wasps, yellow jackets, hornets that were in close proximity to students on school grounds. That one instance, for instance, was the nest was right under a slide in the playground equipment. So we went out and made the application, and those are considered emergency responses. If you'll notice there in the second page, it lists every school. There is one school that is not listed on there, and that's Trillium Creek. And that is because Trillium Creek, the parent community there has gotten together and taken this on as a topic that they have great interest in. We have reached an agreement that as long as they continue to provide parent support and we would not spray there, they have held that agreement now for 6 years and continue to hold it. There are other schools that have reached out to Trillium Creek, Sunset, Bolton, and Cedar Oak, and are now starting their own program there. So we may have more schools that follow that same protocol, that they will make the investment, and we will not use any herbicides on that site. So it is working. People are learning about how they can reduce the usage. We've installed about another 1,500 feet of fence guard this year to reduce fence lines. We anticipate installing about 1,500 feet a year until we get to the approximate 10 miles of fence that we have in the district. People don't realize how much fencing there is around all our school sites. It works out to about 10 lineal miles. This completes about the first mile this year that we put in. So we'll continue to do that, try and reduce usage even further. But this is the annual report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
No, I don't have any questions. I'll yield the floor to my colleagues here, but I think just as far as a little bit of framing, maybe some board members know this, but this has been a topic of conversation for some years. And so that's, I'm very aware of like the care in which you're talking about, why the levels are different from year to year and what's going on at Trillium Creek. And I think it's worth noting that this is, past 6 years that probably Trillium Creek has been pulling those weeds. We've been talking about how to reduce the use, and I know your department has been taking those concerns seriously and working to, how how to reduce the use of Roundup, but also like balance that with the requirements of manually removing weeds. And finding that tolerance zone with our community. Well, how many weeds can you tolerate? Where can we tolerate them, where can we not? So just thank you for that, looking into that conversation and looking on those fence lines. Spots. Yeah, so for anybody new to this conversation, that's really the history there. Are there any other questions or comments? We don't have to take action, so. Okay,
All right,
thank
thank you
you.
very much.
All right, I think the next item then is back to you, Dr. Ludwig, with the proposed inter-district transfers.
Thank you. So this is an annual determination that you as a board make based on policy regarding families' requests for transfers into the district if they don't reside here, and out of the district if they do reside here but would like their children to go to another school district. And each year you make that determination about whether to allow for that. And if so, what would be the conditions for that and processes and procedures? So it's very clear to families as well as to staff on how to manage that. And so, you know, the board is typically asked staff for recommendations because we're monitoring enrollment in the district, enrollment projections, and we're also monitoring how much space do we have in our schools. Also, for some context, it has been communicated in the most recent past from our community, particularly during the last bond campaign, that the community really wants the district to hold back on transfers into the district of non-resident students because the community that resides here through their property taxes has put up quite a substantial investment in building infrastructure. And there was a concern at one point that is the enrollment over extended because we're accommodating for more students who don't live here. And so that's why you also have that table in the memo that shows how many non-resident students are in our district. And that actually there is legislation and laws and provisions that will always allow for non-resident students to attend other districts for very legitimate reasons. And not just those years of open enrollment where everybody can kind of freely come and go and that is sunsetted, but also the inter-district agreement. So you can kind of watch those numbers each year and just know that they reflect students who may have started in kindergarten and are still in 12th grade, so they could come from any of those reasons. So the recommendation for this upcoming year of 22-23 from staff, as we look at our capacity, not knowing exact numbers, but kind of looking at trends and projections, is that we believe we should remain open for transfers coming into the district based on the criteria that's allowable by legislation, and for students who are already attending and allowed to continue attending. So you see in letter, so number 1 is transfers in. Letter A, it talks about if they're already non-resident students, they were allowed to transfer in at any point, that we would continue that their siblings would then be allowed to join them, so we don't have divided families. And then families who present a hardship cause, which is in statute. But other than that, we would not open for new families that didn't have one of those provisional conditions to be able to come, that we really want to keep in mind our community saying, let's just watch those number of transfers. There was also quite a bit of conversation with school board members in the past around being good neighbors to our fellow school districts, that everyone is struggling to have full enrollment and adequate funding. and that it doesn't feel as neighborly or collaborative when there's a sense of taking other people's students just for the purpose of gaining more funding for your school district. And so there has, I think, over the last years been more of that type of neighborly, collaborative, informal agreement between school districts that we want to support each other in our ability to fund for our own resident students, but that should there be hardships or conditions that prompt a family to need another school district, that we would always remain open to that. So that's been another movement in the last years, especially as funding has become more difficult and enrollment has gone down. There are schools that we have indicated as closed for transfers because we're watching the space availability in those school buildings, and you'll notice it's the schools that have dual language programs in some of our area of the district, not all, but in some where already there was a higher enrollment. And then when we put a dual language program there, we wanted to make sure we didn't have over capacity. When a student gets into a dual language program, we want to accommodate for that. We've also said their siblings could attend that school. So now we can make sure that that school can accommodate the students who reside there, plus the addition of the students who come to the dual language program and their siblings. And so that's where we have been very careful. And you'll see them listed there with Lowry and Trillium, our two primary schools, Rosemont Ridge, which already was at capacity, and then it had the dual language program placed there. Now, Enzo Wood, because of the opening of Meridian, went down in enrollment and has room now. So we don't perceive, it has a dual language program there, that there's a capacity issue for incoming students and their siblings because of the opening of Meridian. So that's why it's not on the list. And then the two high schools are also not on the list, because what happens by the time the students get to high school is that the program becomes even less exclusive, and it's anyone who has that language ability can take those dual language classes, whether they were in the program in primary school or not. So really, we're just talking about the students in the high school have options now for classes that are taught in Spanish and part of the dual language program. And anyone can take those classes as long as they have the language capacity. Because we are starting the Chinese dual language program this fall at Bolton, we want to be careful about the capacity there. What we've learned is that we can actually stagger that restriction. That if a fifth grader next year wants to go to Bolton, we have room for the fifth grader, but we want to watch the kindergarten class. And so, you know, it's that kindergarten class, and then the following year, the first grade class, and second, as we grow the program, that we want to watch our capacity. So you'll see that the restriction is there, except for grades. One, they can come, here, wrote that off, Bolton primary school grades 1 through 5. Did I write that incorrectly? Dr. Fry, could you come to the podium or is it open grades? It's open grades 1 through 5.
Yep. Yeah, we'll leave grades 1 through 5 open for transfers while starting doing it in kindergarten.
Okay.
Staggered each year. So.
Okay, so I did write it incorrectly. We will correct that on the website. It should say schools closed to introduce the transfer Bolton primary school grades K instead of grades 1 through 5. I
Sure.
wrote the inverse.
Could you
No, I'm
show
sorry, I
how
didn't
where
catch
you are?
that.
Are you on the first page?
Yes, I'm on 1, letter B. Recommendation 1, letter B. This is for transfers into the district. Into district transfers. Okay, and that we will take inquiries until June 24th, and then we'll close, because then over the summer, we've got to start placing staff with class sizes, and it makes it more difficult to doing transfers as well as typical residential enrollment. And then in terms of releasing students, that's section 2, who want to transfer out of the district. Last year, we approved 25 slots. We did have a few on the waiting list, so we increased it to 30. Of course, we want students to stay. We believe that we're an exceptional school district. We'd like families to stay, but we do know that there are circumstances. Now, if they're a senior, they're not part of that 30. So we want them to finish their senior year wherever they've been going or wherever they're enrolled. But then we have kind of a staggering tiered who gets those slots. And we would work with high school students because typically they're in a track or they're kind of working on their 24 credits and they're working through a plan at their high school. So they would be a priority. And then it would go middle and primary school and then siblings. And then if there's still some slots available, if there's some new requests. And then Ms. Douglas does create a wait list because sometimes families change their minds or they move anyway. And if they move, then they should just be off that transfer list. Sometimes they're moving to that location, but they're not sure they can secure their house, so they take a transfer request. But then they end up moving residents anyway, it works out. And so then that slot becomes open again. So it's a little bit of a fluid kind of a process for a while. So this is what we would be recommending is that the board approve this process for transfers into the district with these recommendations and approve the process for the requests for interdistrict transfers out.
So the motion that we're looking for, it's, you're citing some policies in the memo, but we're not making a motion as policy. We're just making a motion to approve the process that's set forth in this memo with the one edit to the.
Correct, because the policy says that the board shall decide every year whether to approve transfers and how many in the process. So this is what you're approving. Yes, we'll approve transfers in and out, but under these conditions and with these criteria as recommended by staff.
All right, so entertaining a motion. I'll move that we approve this memo, I'll move that we approve the interdistrict transfers for the 2022-2023 academic year as set forth in this memo.
With the correction of
The correction that you're gonna make at the bottom of page 1, point 1, subsection B.
Thank you.
I second.
All right, I got the motion and Dr. White has a second. And is there any discussion or questions?
I just wanted to make the point, we received a community comment about this transfer policy. And it was specifically related to a neighboring community or a family in a neighboring community that had concerns about the inclusion and the equity that was offered in their own school district and wanting a district like ours that is so open and has so loudly proclaimed that all students belong, wanting to be in a district like ours. And then I've also heard anecdotally that our district's groundbreaking in Oregon full inclusion model for special education is also another reason why people are attracted to what we do. And it's hard with the transfer policy because I think people can see our district and see the standards that we're setting. And it's hard when it's just over, city or school district boundary, that it's so close but so far away. And I'm just mentioning it because I was really moved by the email that we received, and it just reinforced, I think, what we all know, which is, school districts matter, and the decisions that school districts make and the administrators and the staff that we hire have a real impact on families' feelings of welcome and inclusion. And so I support this motion. Staff's obviously done a great job of putting together a very reasoned approach to transfers, but it's also tough, to see that not every district has this applied inclusion. So just wanted to point that out, and mostly to just make sure that the family that contacts us knows that we hear you and it continues to drive forth our values.
Okay, I think that we can call the vote.
Louis Taylor,
Aye.
Christy Thompson,
Aye.
Kirsten Wright,
Aye.
Chelsea King,
Aye.
and Kelly Slade.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on to our final agenda item, the preliminary 2022-2023 school year calendar adoption. Dr. Ludwig.
I did forget to mention with the last item on the agenda, the table that you saw that showed each year and the schools and what were the approved non-resident students attending. You notice the column that had the year 2021, there was just X's. That was the year of COVID and we were all online. There was an email that we did get from a patient around, does that mean that you didn't report any or the district didn't want to tell what was going on? Actually, quite the opposite. We tried very hard to determine resident and non-resident, but because everyone was remote and because the state made a waiver around some of those things around attendance and residency, we had students who did say, I'm going to go live with my grandparents, but stay enrolled in school through CDL because they provide the childcare that's needed through COVID. And that happened often across the state, where all of a sudden geographical location didn't matter during CDL, but attending virtually and online was what mattered, and staying connected to school. So we still reported the students as our students, but we did keep a stringent tabs on where are you logging in from, because we did have students temporarily displaced or living with other family members. So school districts across the board have made agreements on just keeping kids enrolled and attending school was more important than insisting on paperwork around transfers every few weeks or months because of those kinds of logistics. So I meant to mention that earlier, but it's important. I just want to say it publicly. It can be in the minutes. Okay, the next item is about the school calendar for 2022-2023. And we typically bring a proposed calendar to the board, or actually around February. But we're bringing it to you a month early because with some of our systems, and particularly with Synergy and how we are enrolling students, we actually need to know that start date to school. It will help us to know it earlier than later, so that we're not just guessing and putting a date in the system, enrolling kids in and enrolling them, but that we're actually using an accurate date. So there are some administrative systems that would be more efficient if we had from the board at least the start date of school. Not to mention families would love to know early. And uniquely, we are still in some very important conversations, particularly with our high school, around our reimagining and updating of high schools. And we've talked to you about our grading for equity. We've talked to you about CTE and college and career. The other conversation we've been having for several years now is around semester, quarters, trimesters. We were actually having those conversations prior to COVID. And then COVID and CDL occurred, and then if you recall, we went completely to quarters, and students only took 3 classes at a time. So it gave us a great opportunity to try something different and to explore that. And now we're back to semesters, but teachers are very committed to staying in that conversation and thinking about what high school schedule actually promotes and encourages the kinds of CTE apprenticeship coursework in the direction we were looking at as we were reimagining high schools. They are midway through, if not kind of near some of those conversations, but have not made a decision right now. But they will have landed on something by your March meeting. So we're doing something very unique. We're asking you to adopt some parts of the calendar tonight and then reserve the full calendar for March. So what's in front of you is an adoption tonight of when would be the first day of school. That we are making sure that our calendar, you can ask that we stay accountable to the 173 and 175 days. The federally recognized holidays that impact the school calendar, and designate the winter break and the spring break, which are pretty consistent statewide with other school districts. As we've looked at those, and that also becomes something that we hear from families they'd like to know sooner than later. So if we're waiting until March, which is a little later than typical, to designate semester or term demarcation, and then the subsequent staff development days and the final day of school, where that would land exactly. We do believe you could adopt those early decisions, and we would do this in the 2 adoption. So our recommendation is that we begin on Tuesday, August 30th, for the first day for students, and this is going back to decisions that the board had made to begin prior to Labor Day, so that we're more aligned to schools on the East Coast and the Midwest, and with AP College kind of courses and high school sports, and just a number of reasons to bump up a week earlier, be more aligned. Because of COVID, we pushed that back, and then also this year did that again. But there was conversation even last year about coming back to the pre-Labor Day start. So there it is, Tuesday, August 30th. There you see the 7 federally recognized holidays that impact the school calendar, the winter break designation, and the spring break. So we would be asking you to approve those. We can post that information online, but we wouldn't have the full calendar completed. And these are in alignment with our agreements with the association. Of course, we're in negotiations this year. We don't know what will come out of that. But to date, they do align with our agreements. And I have talked to the association president.
All right, so probably our questions and whatnot, but I think procedurally, it probably makes sense to get a motion on the table first. That's how we're doing this. So I'm entertaining a motion.
I move that we approve the recommended initial calendar designations of the first day of school, federally recognized holidays that impact the school calendar, winter break, and spring break.
All right, Vice Chair Thompson has a motion and Director Sloop has a second. Questions and comments?
Question that I have is, have we fully vetted all the dates so that we don't run into any conflicts again? I assume that we have. I'm just asking the question so that I know that we have fully vetted these dates and that they are not in conflict with anything that might exclude someone for conflicts in their own personal lives and things of the sort when it comes to religious holidays, et cetera, et cetera. Have we taken a peek at all of that?
There are a lot of questions within that question. We have vetted this calendar for federally recognized holidays, and those considerations that a public school and our policy should vet with. Our policy does not ask us to take into consideration religious holidays, so we don't do that as a standard practice. But we have vetted these dates for the criteria that's set in our policy and for the federally recognized holidays, as well as agreements with associations and our employees.
I'm staring at a computer screen, but I'm looking at Lewis and Christy there. So
I hear her answer, so I'm good.
Yeah, I was also just the same Director Sloop saying that she's not observing a similar conflict with what we experienced last year. I think it kind of begs the question about, policy and what effect does the board influence calendar making via policy, which is, I think, a separate discussion that, isn't necessarily before us right now.
Right.
Yeah. I do have some questions. At first, a request that you could relieve, because I wouldn't want to your communications approach. That's not my job as a board member, but I'm just noticing that if I was a parent and I opened the website and I saw this calendar, I would assume that we were good to go on all the things. And so just a consideration, like posting, just like first day of school, and just a list of a few dates.
This
versus a calendar.
visual is only here for you to be able to reference
Yeah.
where they land, Monday to Tuesday.
Yeah, that's not going to be put up on the
But this
website.
is
Yeah.
not placed on the
Okay.
website. We think of it more as a verbiage narrative, maybe 4 bullet
Yeah,
points.
okay, great. And then, so I think the only real question I have when I study this is that I see that the last day of school, actually, the memo does not say that the last codified here in this calendar, but I'm seeing that it is.
No, we look at the memo. The only reason we gave you this copy of a calendar is so you could see a calendar format.
Okay, so that where
You're not designated last day of school yet.
okay, so when I see the 12th color coded as last day of school and I see the 19th color coded as a non-contract day, why are those colors there?
That's not what you're approving though.
Okay,
You're not approving this, this sheet.
okay,
It's just there. Some people need a visual of a calendar to see where things land in a month. You're approving what's in the memo. You're not approving the last day of school and the 3 days until March.
right. I understand totally what you're saying.
Because it could change.
I'm understandably, this whole situation makes me a little nervous and yeah, so we're going by the memo. That
Correct.
visual of the calendar does not apply to this vote.
Correct,
It's solely there
correct,
just so we have a calendar.
correct.
Okay, so no last day of school has been designated.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. You say it one more time. Yeah, I think that's enough.
And this calendar format will not be posted on until it is completed March in all of the.
It leaves a little bit of time between now and March to further explore, how things might unfold in the final. This is not a final draft. It's setting up several holidays, first day of school. Yeah. Okay, thank you. That helps me. Are there any further questions or comments?
Christina
Aye.
Thompson,
Aye.
Christian Wright,
Aye.
Joseph
Aye.
Kelly Slade. Aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful for our staff. And we really appreciate it. Thank you. I know it's a little unorthodox and don't anticipate doing it this way every year, but we needed to.
Great. All right, so our next meeting is that work session, which will be held virtually on January 24th. And I think that's everything. Adjourned.
Yeah, could I ask Chair King if you or Vice Chair Thompson would give the closing remarks for that work session? Just thank you. Remarks. Okay.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
All right, we're adjourned.